Good morning, everyone. In the last session, we are trying to discuss about the string annotations here. The core annotations we identified, how this particular stereotype annotation we identified, one of the component annotation. So now you can see here the particular code it's showing here without adding this particular bean tag. We are able to run our application here. Okay. So today we'll discuss another important example here, how we can integrate with our application with the databases here. So what are the different configuration we need to identify here to work on this particular databases here. Okay, so before going to discuss about this particular Spring Spring databases, first we need to identify what are all the other database we are having and what are the drawbacks we are having here. Okay, so whenever we are trying to work with any database framework here, first what we will do, we are going to initialize our data framework here. Okay, any data frameworks, first we need to initialize here, then only we can handle the various connections, or we can call it as a various exceptions here. So basically, whenever we are trying to connecting the application or closing the connection, so we are going to get various exceptions here. So those exceptions we are going to handle. But what is the steps? Basically, what we will do, we'll open the connection and we'll try to create the one resource here. And once operation is completed, the resource, we'll try to close the connections. Okay. So this is, we'll try to discuss about the important here. Get in the pen. And while getting this particular exception, whenever we are trying to store the particular organization related information, anything, because in the database nowadays all the data we are trying to store here. So when we are trying to get an exception, the data is going to be corrupted or it is deleted the valuable information here. So because of that, now what we will do, we'll try to come up with one of the important thing like exception mechanism here. So we'll identify how this particular exception mechanism is going to work here. Okay, and the Spring framework, basically it is provided different types of data access frameworks here that it is integrated with our Spring applications here. Okay, now we'll see what are the different frameworks we can access. We identify Spring Jdbc as well as we can connect with the Spring ORM frameworks here. So inside the ORM, we are going to communicate the different technologies here. Okay, the one of that Hibernate and JP. Get in the pen. So this is important. And whenever we are trying to run our application, we'll try to create the database related section under the DOO module. Okay, so DO module. So this basically what exactly this particular DO module will contain here. So this is, it is going to provide the data access objects here. Get in the point. So here inside this particular model, we are trying to access the data access model, or we can call it as a data access objects. Here everything we are going to create a one model classes. Those model classes will try to store into the databases, and the same way we'll fetch the data and we'll modify the data. Get in the point. So finally we'll delete this particular records, and how this particular data is going to create internally with help of this particular interfaces and implementation classes. For example, from here, from this particular service, most of the cases this particular service only we are going to call this particular database related information, and from the service we'll call the database interfaces. Okay, from this particular database interfaces we are going to call database implementation classes. Okay, database implementation classes. So inside this particular database implementation classes, we'll try to connect to this particular we'll try to connect this particular information, something like a DB. So this is the database we are going to connect from this particular flow. First, the call is going to receive from the service. From the service, we'll try to connect with our interface. So inside the interface, we'll create the multiple methods like insert method, update method, delete method, and so load related method. So these are all the methods we'll create under this particular interface, and the interface will try to implement inside this particular implementation classes. For each and every operation, we'll call this particular database. Get in mind. So to get the data or to insert something, update everything. So these are all the important information we are going to discuss. Right now, what we need to understand here. Okay, so now we identify the flow, how it is going to work here. Now we'll try to discuss about the before discuss about the Spring JDBC, what are the like other technologies we are having. Now observe carefully. Basically, before discussing about this particular Spring JDBC, we used to connect with the normal JDBC. Okay, if anyone knows normal JDBC is fine. So otherwise, now I will explain the what are the drawbacks here. So basically, the important drawbacks here, SQL exception. Okay, SQL exception. This is important here. How this particular SQL exception is going to work internally. Getting the point. Whenever we are trying to communicate with any applications here internally, we used to handle the particular SQL exception. SQL exception is basically it is a checked exception. Okay, it is a checked exception. We discussed about this particular checked exception in the last example. Whenever we are discussing like the core Java exception landing. So we need to use this particular exception with help of this particular try catcher. So even though this particular exception is not going to throw any exception, even though this particular exception is not going to throw an exception, but we need to handle this exception with help of this particular try and catch block, because at the compilation time only we are going to get an exception. Because of this, we are going to handle this. So this is one of the biggest drawback here, because so even we are not getting any exception, forcefully we are trying to defining this particular try and catch block here. Okay, so basically when we are trying to work with this particular JDBC, first we'll create a one connection. Okay, this particular connection, it will try to communicate with the database to make the relationship between this particular database and our Java code. So after this particular connection, we are going to prepare the one statement here. Okay, so we'll try to prepare the statement, and after this we'll try to perform the various operations here, like insertion, updation, deletion, release operations we are going to perform. After this we'll try to close the connections. Okay, so statement and connection. So these two sections we are going to close. So these are all the common steps. Like you can see, so connecting and closing the database information is the common, but this particular section is the dynamic. Like in session updation, it's going to perform based on the input here. But the connecting the database and closing the database is very common information here. Okay, now even though if you're trying to open the connection and even though if you're trying to close the connection, so we need to use this particular try and catch block, because internally each and every code it is going to throw an exception called SQL exception. Getting the point? This is important. Now, so when we are trying to communicate with our Spring, the SQL exception is no longer available. So Spring come up with different exceptions here. Getting the point? Different exception. The important example basically here, one is data access exception. Okay, inside this particular DO model, we are going to get this particular main exception class here. So along with this particular data access exception, we have some other classes, but all the exceptions are unchecked exception. This is important here. Unchecked exception. So differences we need to understand, unchecked and checked exceptions basically. Getting the point? So checked exception we are going to handle the compile time, but unchecked exception we are not going to come up with any the try and catch block. If we get any exception, we'll try to handle this particular exception at runtime, not the compile time. Okay, and along with this particular data access exception, we have some other exception like username related exceptions and what we can call it as a access denied related exception. And if you are trying to like work with any locking related section, so we are going to have acquire lock exception. Okay, so when we are trying to delete the data from the database, we have a exception class called cleanup related exception. Getting them? We have a different types of runtime exception, or we can call it as a unchecked exception. But whatever we discuss in the JDBC related section, that is all the checked exceptions. Okay. Now we identify the differences how we implemented in the Spring and the normal JDBC here. Now after this, we need to communicate this particular example. This is very important here. Everything, whatever the common code we are going to write here, the opening the connection and closing the connection, the particular code is going to define under this particular template here. The template can contain the normal code here. So for example, if you see, so DOO template, any DOO template, not only this particular JDBC, we are, if you are trying to communicate with the Hibernate also, it will comes under the same template here. Okay, what it will do, this particular template, basically, it will try to prepare the resource here. Okay, and the second one, what it will do, so it will start the transaction. Start the transaction is nothing but it will try to, it's ready to communicate the operation with help of this particular database here. Okay, and next step, basically the DO callback. Basically, this is the template we are discussing here. Template is going to provide the resource and start the transaction. And here, the third step inside this particular DO callback. Basically, this is, we are going to call it as a DO callback. This is the callback. It is going to perform the dynamic operation, like execute the same transaction. Whatever the transaction is started, this transaction is going to execute with help of this particular callback here. Getting the point. This is the transaction is going to execute. And after this, now what happens internally? The fourth here, it is going to commit. Getting the point. So commit and roll back the changes. Based on the exception, it is going to roll back. If you are not getting any exception, it is going to commit the changes. So where it is going to commit? In the database. Getting the point. And so here, what we need to understand here, so we can make this fifth here. Now you can see, execute the transaction and it is going to return the data. Return this particular data. Once this particular transaction is executed, it will try to return the data, and the same data it is going to commit and roll back it. And after this, now what we can understand is, it is going to close the resource here. Okay, close the resource. Now you can see these steps are same. Whenever we are trying to discuss here, these particular steps are same, and only these steps will modify here. Based on the input, this particular executing the transaction and returning the data will modify based on our inputs here. But preparing the resource and start the transaction, so committing rollback and close the connection. So everything is same. So because of this, the Spring come up with the templates here. The template is going to do the common operation, and this particular section will perform manually. Okay, this particular section only we are going to perform manually. This is important information we need to understand here. Getting the point. So these are all about the one of the important example called template and callback here. Now we'll see what are all the different templates we are having. Getting the point. What are all the different templates we are having? This is important information we need to understand here. So now if I'm going to explain this particular template, so try to remember this particular template and callback, how this particular template and callbacks are working internally in our Spring framework here. Now, so observe carefully here. Now what I'm trying to do, here I'm trying to provide the different types of template. First we are having JDBC template. Okay, so JDBC template. This is important here. And another one is, so simple JDBC template. Okay, so another important section, what we can understand here. Okay, so this is the simple JDBC and JDBC template. And another important information I'm trying to discuss about the named parameter. Named parameter JDBC template. Okay, and Hibernate template. Getting the point. Hibernate template. And so finally JPA template. These are all the different templates we are having. This is important. We need to understand whatever the template we are discussing here. Now it will try to discuss this particular different templates here. We'll try to cover up the one by one how this particular each and every template is going to work, and the differences also we are going to provide here. But what we understand here, so using this particular template only, now we are going to communicate the database here. Getting the point? So this is important here. Now observe carefully what I'm trying to provide the information here. So this is important. We need to understand here. After declaring this particular template, now what we will do? So we'll try to discuss about the DOO support classes. Basically, the support class is no longer using internally the template only. It is providing this particular DO information. But what you need to understand here, getting the point. What you need to understand here. So we'll understand what exactly the DO classes is going to provide. So basically, as I provided the information regarding this, the each and every template also provide the convenient method to communicate the database operation. Getting the point. So without creating this particular explicit callback implementation, because each and every the template internally it will contain the methods here to communicate with the databases. But why we need to create the explicit callback implementation here? Getting the point? Because here I'm trying to discuss about the important section called DAO support classes. Getting the point? So this particular support classes basically, this support class basically it is available from the 2 version to the around 3.5 version. In the 4 version, it is not available, this particular DO version, the DO support classes. Okay, the DO support classes behavior, internally it is implemented inside this particular template only. But why we need to create this particular explicit callback information here? Getting the point? So here the template and callback design. So what exactly it is doing here? It is trying to provide the DO support classes here. So whatever we discuss here, the template and callback. Here I explain the simple diagram. First one is template and second one is support classes. So here we discuss the support classes, what it will do, and the DO template is what is doing here. Okay. So this is for callback classes and this is for template. Now, what we need to understand here, so if I'm going to, if I'm going to include these two sections, these two sections we are going to call it as this particular, the DO support classes. The DO support classes now, it can contain the template as well as this particular callback classes here. Getting the point? So using this particular DO support, like extending this particular DO support, we are going to create the template, and from the template we'll try to come up with the different types of methods here. Okay, so this is important. We need to understand here. So how this particular diagram it is going to work internally. Now if you see this, I'm trying to providing from the DO implementation. So this is the DO implementation. From the DO implementation, first we are going to connect with the DO support. So from the DO support, now what I'm doing here, and here we are trying to provide the data access this particular template here. Okay, and from this particular data access template, now we are going to communicate with our database. Okay, we are going to connect with this particular database. So this is the way of implementing this particular DO support here. Now we'll see how this particular different types of DO support classes we are having. The first one, so Jdbc support. Okay, so this is the Jdbc DO support here. We'll identify how this particular Jdbc DO support will contain. So it is having the method called get template. Okay, so get template and get connection. It will connect the database object and it will try to return the template. This particular template will contain the whatever the different types of method we are having to communicate with the databases here. So these are all the information which we are trying to get under this particular DO support here. Okay, now we'll see how this particular DO supports are going to connect. So before going to discuss this particular application here, now we identified how we can communicate the data sources here. Getting the point. So we need a data source to communicate our databases here. Without the data source, we are not going to communicate with our databases. Like what are the different types of data sources we are having? Now we'll see the different types of data sources. Basically, we'll identify the one of the important here JDBC related section, the driver manager data source here. Because now we are trying to discussing Spring JDBC here. Okay, Spring JDBC, this particular module we are discussing now. Whenever we are trying to discussing this particular Spring JDBC, now what we need to understand here, we need a JDBC related data source here. The JDBC driver data source we need here. So how this particular, the driver, the data source is going to created internally. Now this is coming from the Spring JDBC. How we are going to achieve this? The one of the important class called driver manager data source. Getting the point. So this particular data source class will contain the connection related information, some of the methods here. So using this particular method, we'll try to connect our database here. Okay. If I'm going to open this particular driver manager data source, will contain any information here. So let me show you this particular driver manager. Okay, driver manager data source. So this is, we need to discuss about this from where it is coming. Now you can see Spring Framework, getting the point. Spring Framework JDBC dot data source here. Oh, so this particular source is not available here. Let me see from where it is trying to load. So inside the JDBC, okay, these are all the different versions we are discussing, 4 versions. So right now we are not using any 4 version related here. Getting the point. This particular class, this particular class is no longer available. Now what we can do, we need to add this particular JDBC related section. So what we can do, first what we can do, we need to go to this particular Maven repository. Getting the point. This is important here. We need to discuss this particular Maven repository. So from the Maven repository only, we can add Spring JDBC. Sorry. Now I'm trying to show you this particular Spring JDBC. Now, yesterday we download one of the important information about this. What is the version we downloaded? Let me go to the pom.xml. So 312. Okay, the 312 related the JDBC we are going to download here. Now, if I'm going to show you the 312. So do we have the 312? Yes, we have here. Now you can use this particular 3.1.2 versions here. So randomly I'm trying to picking this. So you can select any one of the version, but each and every version it should be depends on the another versions here. So this is important, we need to understand. If you miss the dependencies, the application is not going to work. Now what we are doing is we are trying to create this particular 312 release version into the local. So once it is available to the local, so the same class we can modify it. Driver manager data source. So if I'm going to show you this again, sorry, again it is trying to load from this. So driver manager data source, now it will available. Now you can see, so this is the class, the driver manager data source class. Now if I'm going to provide this particular extend here, from where it is trying to providing data source here. Okay, this is the data source is an interface here. Now you can see get connection we are having, and so we have a login timeout, and so this particular get connection basically This is coming from the where javax.xql. This is not the Spring related. This is basically whenever we are trying to communicate our normal JDBC also, we are going to use the same interface. Whatever the interface I'm showing here, the data source, this is it is going to use in the normal JDBC, and in our Spring also they implemented the same this particular data source, and they come up with different classes, and inside this particular driver manager data source. So let me show you the exception class data. Uh, okay, so I think inside this class is no longer available. Data access exception. Now you can see, so 312 only. If I'm going to show you this, where it is created inside this particular org spring framework.do package, they created the one of the exception class. So this is the data access exception. Now you can see it is the one abstract class here. This is one of the abstract class. But what we can do, so it will try to extend some of the classes from this particular data access here. But now you can see nested runtime. Now nested runtime internally it is extending from this particular runtime. So runtime exception is coming from the where? It is coming from the Java. Getting the point? It is coming from the Java. Now you can see package java.lang here. Now whenever the nested, whatever the nested runtime exception we are discussing here, this is coming from the where? Now this is coming from the Spring here. Getting the point? So this is coming from the core, and whatever the DO we are discussing here, this is coming from the DO package. So see carefully how we are trying to creating the particular exception hierarchy. So these are all the different exception hierarchy we need to understand here. Now internally this particular class also it's going to extended by some other classes. So far whatever the classes we discussed here, these are all the unchecked exception. Unchecked exception. Now if I'm going to show you data source, whether we'll have here, I think we are having here. So SQL exception. Now you can see get connection internally, it is going to throw an SQL exception. SQL exception is basically checked exception. So it is coming from the java.sql package here. Now you can see it is trying to extending java.lang.exception. So because of this, it is trying to throw in a compilation only. At the time of compilation only, it will give you an exceptions here. So we need to handle with try and catch flag. So this particular exception now we replaced with whatever the exception I shown here, something like this one. Data access exception. Getting the point? So this exception is coming under this particular DO package. Okay, this is we created. Now we identify this particular where is the class? Driver manager data source. So this particular driver manager data source we are going to use to communicate all the JDBC related example here. Now it will contain the different information. Now you can see we are passing the URL, and along with the URL we are passing the username and password. So what is the username password we are going to pass? The database related username and password we are going to pass here. Okay, this is we need to understand. Now after this, now what I am doing is I'm trying to providing some property along with the URL. It is going to take some properties here. Now another one, it is deprecated here. So this is the set driver class method we are having, and get connection from the driver. If you provide this particular property, it will try to provide the connection related information here. Okay, this is one of the important information we need to understand regarding this particular driver manager data source. So this is the main class we are going to connect the data sources here. Now we identified here. Now when we are trying to communicate with this particular JDBC, what exactly we are going to write here? We'll try to provide we'll try to provide this particular information. Now what we can do, we are going to create the model classes first. What are the model classes we are going to use? So we'll discuss here simply the basic model classes we are going to discuss here. So all the packages are coming here. Okay, now we identified this. Now I'm going to resolve the right side section. Sorry, all are gone. And here I'm going to create one more package. So core, I think core it is not needed. JDBC I'm trying to create. Okay, inside this particular JDBC will provide the information. Getting the point. So now what I will do, first we'll see the one example on this particular JDBC. So in the browser we'll see how this particular JDBC related example it's look like a normal JDBC, so that we'll understand how we are trying to use the particular try and catch blocks. So JDBC example with MySQL. Now we'll see. Now if you observe carefully here, now you can see we are trying to creating one driver information. So you can identify try block here. This is important. I'm trying to show only this particular try and catch here. Now here, what is an exception? Here is trying to handle the exception, but we are going to handle the SQL related exception. Now we'll see this particular class will contain any other information. Okay, now these are also same, but now you understand here connection we are creating, and later we are creating this particular statement, and based on this particular statement we are doing this particular operations here. Getting the point. And finally we are closing this particular station, and now you can see try and catch block we are using. This is the simple JDBC. Getting the point. This is the simple JDBC example. Now if I'm going to communicate this particular same example in the Spring JDBC, now you will understand the differences how we are implementing. So I'm keeping this page as it is. We'll compare with the normal Spring JDBC and normal JDBC how we are implementing internally. Okay, so observe here, we identify the try and catch block in the how many places we are using it. So as I explained here, first we'll discuss about the JDBC template, and later we'll move on to the DO support classes here. Okay, observe. So if I want to create this particular JDBC, first what we need, now I will copy this. Okay, so we modified the versions, right? Now what I will do, the same file I'm going to copy, and I will create one more XML file here. Spring-jdbc.xml. Spring-jdbc.xml. Now here I'm trying to use, so now will not use this particular sections here. I'm trying to remove it. Only the beans tag we have. Now I'm going to create this particular bean tag. So what is the bean tag we are going to create? We'll try to discuss about the Spring JDBC. Whenever we are trying to discuss about this particular JDBC, now we need to define like this. Bean ID is equals to JDBC template, and class is equals to, we need to identify the JDBC template is coming under the which package here. So to understand this, now what we can do, we need to load this particular class here, JDBC template. So now you can see, so we have two packages like a 429. Because of this particular MVC, one more application, it is trying to show this particular 429, but we'll discuss about the 312 related sections here. Now if we go to this, so this is the JDBC template here. Now what I will do here, I'm going to copy this particular package. Okay, this is the package we need to specify. After this particular package, we need to write the JDBC template. Getting the point. So we need to write the fully qualified name here. And after this, so what are the particular properties we are having? This is important here. So first one, now if I'm going to show you this particular JDBC, if I'm going to show you this particular JDBC, how the dependency injection is working internally. So this is the default constructor, and we are having parameterized constructor. It is expecting data source. Getting the point? It is expecting this particular data source here. Now you can see, so we have a different another constructor we are having. So there is no setter method here. Getting the point? There is no the setter method here. It is trying to come up with the only constructor. Now what I will do, Here I'm going to write this particular constructor. Let me copy this, and here I'm going to write the constructor arg here, and inside this particular constructor arg, I'm going to provide the references, something like a data source. Getting the point? So this is the JDBC template creation objective. Now we provided this particular JDBC template, but here internally it is expecting data source. So what is the data source we need to create here? So as I explained here, we need to create this particular the data source called driver manager data source. Getting the point? We need to create about this particular the driver manager data source. Now observe how I'm going to create here. Bean ID, I'm going to pass the same data source here because reference and ID should match here. And so as we discuss here, class here. What is the class we are discussing here? Something like this particular driver manager data source. Now you can see I'm going to copy this particular class, and this particular class also we need to provide the fully packaged name here. Now you can see here org spring framework dot jdbc dot data source here. Now this is the way of writing this particular data source class. After providing this particular data source class, now what I will do here, we'll identify this data source will contain properties or any constructors. Now you can see this is the default constructor. It is expecting the particular one more constructor with help of this particular URL. Now you can see we are having URL, username and password. So we can pass this particular constructor, or we have a methods also. So if I'm going to show you only set driver class here. Only set driver class we are having. Property. Okay, so we'll see with the help of this particular driver manager data source, correct. Here I'm going to write the properties information. The name of the property we are having driver class name. So what is the driver class name we are going to use here? This is important here. The driver class name basically will go for the what is the driver we are using, like which database we are going to use, the configuration we are going to configure here. So for I'm having, let me connect this Postgres. We'll see what are the connections we are having. So these are all the previous example I connected. Now download Postgres driver. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to create a new application here. Now yesterday I downloaded. First I will remove the existing application whatever I used here. Let me go for the control panel. Here, where is the Postgres? So this particular Postgres I'm trying to uninstall. We'll try to reinstall this. Getting the point. So what, meanwhile, now what we will do, we'll try to find out the Postgres configuration. We'll see what are all the username and the password we need to connect here. Oh, so these are all the different information we are having. Not this. These are all the different information connect to the PostgreSQL database server. So I'm expecting the driver class information. So this is wrong. So directly we can search Postgres driver. So this is the Postgres driver class name. We need to use this particular Postgres driver class name. So still it is uninstalling here. So we need to wait couple of minutes. And meanwhile, now we can create this particular driver class name here. So this is the driver class name we provided. And after this, one more property I'm going to provide. The name of the property is something like URL. Okay. So this URL, where it is going to connect it, like where this particular, the database is located. The database is located, we need to provide here. So something like this particular local host URL. Now if I'm going to show you how this is connecting it, now you can see Jdbc PostgreSQL server name and server port here. I'm copying this. I'm trying to copy this, and here I'm providing this information. So Jdbc PostgreSQL server name. What is the server name? Right now we'll use a local host only. Local host. And what is the port number we are going to use it? Something like 5433. So this is the port for this particular Postgres server. So this is
that the default port for the Postgres?
yes.
Thank you.
Where is the Postgres? Any folder we are able to see? Okay, here only we have. So we need to remove this particular entire folder. Okay, and yesterday I downloaded Postgres.
Are we supposed to use the EDB download to download the Postgres, or we can download?
Yeah, Postgres internally it is trying to connect in the EDB only. From the EDB only we can download this Postgres libraries. So if I will show you, so it is coming to the EDB only. Now if you go to the Postgres download, we'll connect to this application right now. And internally, I'm going to click the Windows here. So I will click on this window installer. Now it is connecting to the EDB only. Inside the EDB, you can select which version you want to download. So it will download here. Now, if I'm going to change the different location, we'll see whether it will work. So in the D drive, not empty, please choose a different folder. So back here, sorry, here I will create. Is not empty. So okay, so I will restart one more time. For now, we'll see in the C drive. Later, I will try to install in the different drives here because I'm having some less space in the C drive. Okay, anyway, we'll insert in the C drive, and I don't need this, and we need only command line. So password. So what is the password right now I'm giving? Whatever the username we are having. So this is the username, Postgres. The same, the password also I'm giving here. Okay, Postgres. So after this, So 54, sorry, 32 is the default port. Now the default local I'm using it. Now we are trying to installing. So what is the port we given? 33 we given. So it is 32 only. And so we created this URL. Now what we will do meanwhile, we'll go for the, so one more property. And what is another property we can provide here? Something like username. So what is the username we are having? So just now we discussed about the username. This is the username. And the password also I given same here. Okay. This is the password. So to connect with any database, these are all the four information is required. Now you can connect with the Oracle, MySQL, Postgres, any other databases, but only the username, password, the URL, and the driver class name. So these are all the basic configurations are going to replace it. But remaining the JDBC template, the driver manager data source, everything is same here. Now what I will do, I'm going to create a classes. So inside this particular, so Spring JDBC, as of now, we don't have any classes here. But how we are going to create it? I'm going to create the classes basically database related classes. So what is the database related classes we can create, and what is an application we can insert here? Something like a person related. Okay, person DAO IMPL I'm trying to create here, because this particular person DAO IMPL will contain the person DAO class. Okay, now you can see, and it will try to implement person DAO. Let me create the one interface here. The interface I created here. So person. So from where we can use this particular person, and we created in the last example. I will copy this person and I will paste into JDBC. And what is the person we are having? So I will remove this. So we are not going to use this particular extending all those things. We'll use this particular section. So we'll see what is an error. This particular information I'm going to implement the save person, and here why we are getting an error? Anything we are missing? So we need to remove this. So not required. So simple person we are creating. So we are going to provide the ID, first name and last name. If you are interested, you can create any the different properties here. Now meanwhile, so in the DOI MPL, now what I'm doing here, I'm going to create the another important call, private JDBC template. Okay. JDBC template I created. So using this particular JDBC template, now what I will do here, I'm going to call the one method called update method. Okay, update method. So using this particular update, you can pass a string, or you can pass this particular prepared statement creator, or you can go for this particular object, or and you can provide the parameter and argument types here. So what is the best one we can use? So this is the best one we can go for, and we can provide the like a SQL query, and after providing this particular SQL query, what are the object we are going to use? We can provide that. Okay, this is important here. Now, so the SQL query I'm trying to create first. So to create this particular SQL query, here only I will use private static we cannot use. String insert SQL. Okay, so what is the database we need to create? Something like insert into so person, getting the pen, and we are going to provide the values. So what are the values we are going to provide? So first we'll create the table here. So if I want to create the table, what we need here? We need a database here. Now you can see, so it is completed here. So this particular section is completed. Now I will show you whether, okay, we don't have the PG admin. So I'm recommended this. So try to use this particular D waiver. So I will show you this particular D waiver. I will give you the images. Now you can go to this D waiver. Okay, so we are not getting this one. So try to download this particular D waiver. Now what it will do? It will give you the some additional benefits here whenever we are trying to connecting Postgres. So I installed this. So this is the only I'm trying to show you. And here I connected different applications here. Okay, anyway, this is the previous application I created. So now we'll go to the edit connection. So it is a different password. Postgres. So test a connection. Okay, database is not available. Okay, anyway, so we'll delete this because this is no longer available. So we reinstall this particular databases here. I will keep this, and I will create a one more database. So now you can see whenever we are trying to create it, it will support these many databases. Okay, Postgres DB2. So this particular MariaDB, MySQL, ODBC, Oracle, some different databases it's going to support here. And now you can see it is going to support the SQL and NoSQL also. So now we are trying to connect on this particular Postgres. I'm selecting the Postgres, and after this, so what is the database name we are going to provide here? So host is localhost. So database. Now the default to database it is providing as a Postgres. Now what we will do? I'm going to change to the Spring Jdbc. Right now we are discussing Spring Jdbc related, but in the real time, this database name will give you different names here, like dev related, QA related, UAT related, getting the point, and in the production related. So the database name will modify based on the environment here. So for our environment, we are using the Jdbc. So I'm trying to providing Spring Jdbc. So after this, so username is same, and what is the password? The password Postgres. So before going to provide the connection, click on the test connection. Getting the pen. So now you can see, so Spring JDBC does not exist here. So Spring JDBC, we are unable to exit this. Now what we can do in that case, first we need to create the, so this particular database, later we can use this particular database here. So far, what are the databases we are having? Anyway, we'll see this. Now it is connecting or not. It is not connecting. Why it is not connecting? Here we have an option to create here. So create a connection, not connection. We need to create the database. So what is other we are having? Database connection. So popular here, we need to select this. Again, it is coming to the same only, right? Now I will connect this. Postgres. No. Delete. So we'll try with the first database. So the database is not available. Because of that, it is giving me an error. Okay, we'll go for the same only. any DB to Postgres. Okay, this is passing. This is basically default database. It is showing here. Okay. So default database is Postgres. Okay. Now I will create a new database here. What is the database name we are trying to connecting? Something like Spring Jdbc. Now click on OK. So new database is created here. Now I'm going to create a connection here. So this is the connection I'm going to create. We'll see Spring Jdbc Postgres. We'll use the connection. Now connected successfully, because right now the database is created. So where it is created, under this particular Postgres, we are trying to creating the databases here. The default one Postgres. So another database I'm creating, because I want to differentiate. So I cannot create this example under the default database here. Getting the point? Now we created. So after coming back to here, now this is our Spring Jdbc. So now you can see we are having the Spring Jdbc. So right now we don't have any the default schema like public schema we are having. So tables. Now if you see any table we are having, no tables. Now what we can do, if you are interested to create the schema, you can create, but inside the public schema I'm going to create the table here. So table, what is the table we are going to create here? What is the table we are going to create? So something like the name of the table we will create. Okay, so we'll see later how we can create this particular table, but now first we need to connect this. First we need to connect this. So to connect this, now what we need here, we need this particular the JDBC we need. Okay, now where I'm trying to providing, so inside this, where is the core annotation? Not this JDBC here. After this particular 5432, we need to specify like this. Now what you understand, this is the URL and this is our database. The database right now we created, so it is connecting with with help of this particular username and password. So to create this particular table, what is the command we need to use here? So the command basically we'll try to use from this particular browser only, like create a table query. So the particular Postgres query we are going to use it. Now you can see, because I'm trying to show you how we can create it. Now you can see create a table. If it is not exist, the name of the table and the column data type, and we can provide the column constants. So far we don't need to provide any constants. Simply now we'll see how it is connecting us. So the table account we are having, getting the point. Now I will copy this, and this particular query only we will use inside our this particular Postgres here. Let me open this from where we are having recent editor. Anything, we don't have any recent editor. Now this is also not. Okay, so this is enable here. Now I am going to provide the information how we can increase this size. Font size we need to increase. Navigation preferences. We have any colors and font here. Font we are having text font, edit. We'll see with the 14. Apply, close. Okay, so this is the way of increasing this particular font here. Now what is the table? So we are going to create the table called person. Getting the point? So because we are trying to discuss about the person here, and so user ID. So just we'll try to create this particular ID here. So we don't have any user ID. So just keep this particular query to create this particular the table inside this particular Postgres. Okay. Now this is the primary key. So username, like we don't have a username, we have a first name here, and I'm going to provide last name here, and I'm going to remove this. So we don't need this particular remaining sections here. Now if I'm going to run this, so where we can run this, so here we are having the run option. Now you can run this. What happens internally? We are getting an error. So syntax error at the line number position 132. Maybe this is this we can remove. Not required. Now you can see, yeah, it's created. Getting the point. Now table is created. If I'm going to show you inside the Spring Jdbc, so if you refresh this, so table is the person is created. What are the column we are having? So if I'm going to expand this, ID, first name and last name. Okay, this is the particular query it is going to use to create the table inside this particular Postgres. Now, what I'm trying to do, here I'm going to insert the value. So to insert this particular value, what we need, again we need one more query here. Getting the point. So how I'm trying to inserting, now you can see, here only we'll insert the record. Insert into the person, and what are the values we can provide. And the values, so here you can provide the something like ID. So we are not getting what is another property, first name, last name. And here another important information, so what we can do, values. Okay, after providing this particular insert into person, ID, first name and last name, we need to provide the values. So ID I'm going to give as a 12, and the first name, what I'm trying to provide, because we are trying to discuss about the Spring here, the Spring and JDBC. Now we'll see what happens here. So whether it's going to give any error or it is giving many the successful. Now you can see what happening, where we are getting it. So 12. So why we are getting this particular 12? So you need to understand this, because so database will contain some of the constraints information here. So to understand more, if you're not familiar here, now what we can do, so try with insert query, how the insert data it's going to insert it into the Postgres related information. So if you're not familiar with this particular any database, so simply what we can do, we'll go to this particular the Postgres. We have a one website here. So inside this particular Postgres, we can try with insert query here. Now you can see here we'll identify somewhere. These are all the information we can easily understand here. Do we have any? Let me try. Here we'll try to search with the insert query. So insert multiple rows here. Now you can see. So insert into table the column list and values, value 1, value 2 and value n. The same thing we are providing. Anything we are missing, we are not missing. Now if you see here, so this is the link table we are having, and also table here. Now you can see insert into link and URL and name we are having. Now you can see how they are providing. Link, these are all the, okay, so we have a serial we provided. Because of this, they are not providing here. So it will automatically, it will generate the value of this particular ID. Now what we can do in our case, so we can remove this particular section, and this particular section also we can remove, and we can run this example. So this is the way of identifying here how what happening internally. For this particular string, what is the data, like how they are using with a single quotes here. Getting the point? They are trying to use with a single quotes here. Now we need to use the same single quotes here. Okay, now we'll see anything we are missing here. Now still we are getting an error. Log. Another step so this is the way of identifying here how we can try to resolve this particular error, because in the Postgres website only they are trying to provide it. This is the way of using the query here. Now, so has more target columns extensions. Getting the point. So whatever we are having here, so these are all the exceptions we are getting. Now, no need to use anything because we are trying to inserting all the records here. But still, syntax we are getting.
You mean to
Okay.
say the ID default will take that ID, right?
Yes, it should take, but here we are getting an error. The integer like input syntax here.
I think the spring you have the extra bracket. Take that bracket out. The after spring. After no, middle in between.
I think this it's
I
not
guess you
required.
don't need the inside those brackets. No, values start after values one bracket.
We'll try with this.
You need that brackets after person values.
No, 1
and
second.
end one bracket.
Not this. It should run this. Syntax error. It is trying to take as an integer. So if it is taking this integer, okay, it is a typecasting mistake we are having here. So invalid input syntax for the integer, like we are trying to pass the string. So if I'm going to provide something 10, what happening? Yes, it's created. So the whatever the ID we created, it is not taking by default here. So we need to provide this particular value. But anyway, we created here. So I thought this particular ID it will provide the dynamically without providing explicitly, but it is not taking it. Now, anyway, so now you can see select star from person. Now if I'm going to run, now we are getting the one record here. So ID, name, and first name and last name. So this is we inserted one record. Same way, now what we need here, we need to insert this particular record. We need to insert the record from the Java code here. Now I'm going to copy this, the values, and wherever we are trying to define this particular insert into person, and we are trying to define this particular values. Here what I will do, here I'm going to provide the particular values. So what are the values we can provide? Something like we can provide ID, first name, last name. Okay, so this is we are going to use here. Now insert SQL, and we need to pass this person dot get ID, first name, last name. Okay, so what is this update is returning here? It is trying to return an int here. Now you can see, so what we can understand this particular int here, the number of rows are affected. Whatever the int value it is trying to return here, based on this particular int value, we can identify how many rows are modified here. Getting the point. Now we can check this. So if we want to check the condition, you can check this particular condition. So it is updated here. And once it is updated, you can check here. Okay. So if you are trying to return the boolean value, you can provide. Otherwise, if update greater than 0, simply we'll print the value. What is the value we can print? So inserted record successfully. Okay, so in the else section, what we can provide here, like exception occurred. Okay, this is the message we can print here. So this particular message will give you the some basic information whether the record is inserted or not. Now what we need here, so we need to create this particular person DO. How I'm trying to create here, first I'm going to provide the particular setter injection, and for the setter injection I want to generate this. Okay, so Jdbc template. Now we'll go to this particular where we are having so Spring Jdbc, and so far we did not create an object here. Bean ID something like person DO, and class here com dot spring dot Jdbc. Inside the Jdbc person DO IMPL, and here what is the name of the property we are having, Jdbc template, and we can provide the references something like Jdbc template. Okay, this is the way of writing this particular classes. So this particular template and this particular template, it should match here. Now it is matching, and this particular name of this particular template, now it should match with this particular Jdbc template. Now finally it is matching. Now we created this, but this particular class from where I'm trying to call here, so you can create the service classes if you are interested. Now let me create the service classes also. So only class I'm creating, I'm not creating any interface here, but in the real-time scenarios we are going to create interfaces as well. Now inside this particular person service, I'm going to add public void and save person. It is going to take as a person. Okay, so if we want to create this, what we can do, private person DO, and here we need to generate the setter for this particular person DO. Now I'm generated. After this, person DO dot save person, I'm calling this. Okay, now we'll create the main class here. So Spring Jdbc main class. Now I'm generating the main method as well, and here what we can do, application context will use, and class path XML application context, and here I will provide the path here. So what is the name of the file we are using, spring-jdbc.xml. After this, context dot get bean. So what is the name of the bean we can provide, person service. Person service, and this is the name of the person service here. After this, now what I'm doing is service dot save person. Now what we can do, we need to create the person object. We need to create this particular person object here. Now I'm trying to create this particular person object. Person is equals to new person. So 11 I'm trying to create, and here what is the record we can insert, because first record is already inserted here. something like whatever we discuss this particular, the name I'm trying to insert in here. Okay, so this is it's completed. Now what is the final step we need to create here? Here I need to create here person service, and here I'm going to make person DAO and a person DAO. Let me make the format of this. So this is we created. Now finally I'm going to run this example. We'll see what is the exception we are getting here. Something like class not found here. Why this class is not founding? Oh, it's miracle. From where we are getting here? Load class Jdbc template. Okay, we'll see. Maybe.
Are we supposed to add any a jar file, a Postgres jar file or anything?
No. Yes, that is we need add, but we'll see. If I'm going to get the Postgres related exception, we'll add. So I'm expecting that, but before only we are getting the Jdbc. So basically this template, the naming convention is wrong. So J only the capital and remaining are the small, but D also we provide as a capital here. So I replaced this. Now we'll run the same example one more time. Now you can see, so driver class name. What happening here? The particular driver class name we are getting here, but now you can see could not load the Jdbc driver class call the org Postgres driver. Now it is trying to load the Postgres driver. So far we don't have this particular Postgres driver. Now what we can do? So again we'll go for the same the Maven repository. Here we can try Postgres. So simply we can run this particular Postgres. These are all the difference we are having. Okay, so we are not getting here something like Postgres SQL jar. So this we can use. We'll go for the 2008 related. I think these are all the not sufficient one. No. So we'll go for the another one. So whatever you are in that is wrong basically. If I'm going to select this 42, Jdbc org. Okay, we'll try this. We'll go to the pom.xml. We'll see how it is trying to downloading of Postgres or not. Now it is downloading. Okay, so after this, again I'm trying to run the same example. So at this time we are getting one more exception here. So the column index is out of range. Where we are getting this? From where? Jdbc template line number 45, main person service person DAO line number 17. So this is, it is giving me an error. So whatever we are trying to call this Jdbc template dot update, it is giving me an error here. Now why we are getting an error? So try to read the exception one more time. This is the the Postgres SQL exception we are getting. Okay, so why we are getting here? Now you need to understand this. The column index is 0 out of range 1. Number of columns we are having. And here, so column index, so it is not loading this. Okay, instead of providing this particular ID, what we can do, I will provide the question marks here. So in place of this particular question mark, these values are going to replace here. Now you can see inserted one record successfully. Now what we can do, we need to go to here and we need to run this particular query. So 11 record is inserted. Getting the point. So basically, what are the main steps we are performing here? These are all the important things. First, I will go to the Spring-Jdbc. So we need to see this particular configuration. So this configuration only will give you the more understanding here. First, we are creating the Jdbc template, and the Jdbc template internally it is depending on the data source, and the Jdbc template how we are creating with help of this particular person DAO. Finally, we are trying to creating an object through this particular person service. So this is the service. First, we are creating service to DAO. Okay, DAO to template, and template to the driver manager classes, and finally it is a database here, something like a DB. Getting the point. These are all the hierarchy it is internally implementing whenever we are trying to inserting this particular record here. So any questions?
Can you go to the bean one more time? Just the ID where you providing, not
ID, this here we are providing
insert update. Yeah. Okay, you're giving that. This is not an auto incremented. Okay.
Okay, the auto increment we'll see when we are trying to discuss about the MVC related example, but this is the basic example. We are only passing the values.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay, any other questions?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
How to connect sir Pro SQL, sir? Explain again.
These are all the configuration. So this is only I explained, right? Because the Jdbc template internally, I will show you the class. Here you can see it is depending on the data source. The whatever the Jdbc template we are using, it is depending on the data source. This data source we are trying to connect from the driver manager data source, because internally the driver manager data source is trying to implementing from the data source, because data source is an interface. So if you see here, if I'm going to show you the type, it is a interface here. So you can see the icon, it is showing as an interface. So javax.sql.data source. This data source we are providing the implementation class. This is the one of the implementation class we are having. Using this particular implementation class we are providing. And internally we discuss here is expecting the URL, and it is expecting the username password. The same information we are providing here. Now you can see, so username and password URL. But only we need to specify here driver class. So it will try to generate the specific queries for this particular databases here. For this purpose, we need this particular driver class name also. Okay. So is it clear?
Okay, sir.
Okay. Any other questions?
Sir, I have a question, but it's not related to JDBC. I have a question. I was trying to practice and then I was not able to uh, run the file, sir. Can I show it at the end of the class?
Like what file you are trying to run?
I added dependencies to my POM file, and then when I'm trying to create Bean Factory, it is not showing. You know, it's not
Uh,
importing the Bean Factory. So
okay. So one second, just be online. Like we'll try to close others. Any other have any queries? Anyone? Okay. If not, we'll continue tomorrow. So just you wait here. We'll see your query, like what you're having.